us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Mary, seat of wisdom, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. So this morning, we study, reflect on the capacity we have to demonstrate the existence of God. We know God through faith, but in philosophy we must verify if we can know Him through reason. That is the object of the class this morning and next, when you come back from the March Pro-Life in Washington. You will have at least one day to take a rest. Huh? Okay, so two objections to the capacity. An objection to the capacity we have to prove that God can be demonstrated by our human reason. The first, it is the hypothesis of the existence of God as unnecessary. It is not necessary. We don't need. You have some difficulty?
Yeah.
No problem. With the help of God, we can find a solution. Is it broken, Father?
Yeah, it's broken.
You know, we should never quit. Last time I was not able to unscrew it, so it was so tight. Because it's plastic.
Yesterday I put a little bit of paper under this.
Yeah.
Now it's work.
Anyway. We have a genius.
Okay.
Genius job. Genius job. Thank you very much. So, you know, what is the argument for those people? They say, we don't need to prove God because nature is sufficient. If we study nature, we consider nature, we don't need to prove the existence of God. And so we don't need, in fact, we don't need God first. We can live by ourselves. And, you know, it's not, in fact, the science alone can be sufficient to explain everything. What is that current in the 19th century pretended that everything can be explained by science? Positivism. Huh? You remember that? Positivism. Huh? It is a philosophical current from Auguste Comte. Huh? They pretend that science can explain everything. And what science, what is not measurable, what we cannot observe, does not exist. That we call positivism. And even today, that influence is very strong in scientists, among scientists, very strong. St. Thomas, right? Go to the three last line of the quotation of St. Thomas. Huh? He said, for all natural things can be reduced to one principle, which is nature. So those who oppose the capacity of knowing God by reason, they say nature is sufficient. And all voluntary things can be reduced to one principle, which is the human reason or will. So everything can be explained by reason or will or by nature. It is the materialistic position, no? In materialism, it is exactly that position. The recent naturalism, you know, who must be prudent. Today, people speak about nature. Since the Illuminati, since the Enlightenment, we speak about nature. But the nature they speak about is not the nature St. Thomas speak about. It's the nature autonomous, completely independent from God, from any causes. Huh? Etc. Okay, so what can we answer to that? When we will prove the existence of God, we will show two things. First, the nature is not sufficient to account for itself. So we have to prove that. And one of the reasons I give you immediately, it is nature is contingent. Because nature is changing. So contingency, contingent. So in fact, nature cannot justify by itself its own existence. Secondly, that the hypothesis of God is necessary to explain the universe. So if first science cannot prove, we cannot deny, in fact, the existence of God because nature is contingent. We have, secondly, the capacity, not only the capacity, it is necessary to affirm the existence of God to explain contingency. Contingency can be explained only by necessary being. A contingent being can be explained only by the necessary being. Why? Because a contingent means something happened in the history. So if something happened, my existence, for example, your existence, that suppose there is something necessary that my existence arrived, a cause. And we go for many, we arrive to God. Now, secondly, second objection, the objection probably the most difficult is the objection of evil. I don't know if you face that problem with some member of your friend or family or parishioner. They are very good health, and suddenly they have cancer, or their children die in a crash plane. You know, problem of evil. It is for many people, it is a stumbling block. But we don't study that right now. We have a chapter at the end in April about that. Okay? But it is a big problem. And many people, they deny God because of that. And in France, you have a famous author, Albert Camus. Albert Camus, he was an existentialist, but he denied the existence of God in the name of the children who were killed, you know. They were innocent, they were killed in Algeria, for example. So the problem of evil. Now the response to that. This objection will be studied later. So be patient, but be sure it is very important for you. Because when you will be a teacher, a priest, or only a simple Christian, and many times you have to face that problem. Does God exist? Because, you know, he left all ISIS killed babies, they are beheaded, they are killed, you know. Where is God? The problem, Where is God? Now, page 2. So atheism, we spoke about that last class. So atheism is the denial of the existence of God. God does not exist, period. Does not exist. God cannot be demonstrated, agnosticism. So remember the two positions, atheism, agnosticism. Atheism, they deny clearly the existence of God. Agnostic, they say, we don't know. We can believe in God, but that is not rational. And you remember, because of that, they destroy religion. Skepticism, agnosticism, is a poison destroying any religion. Why? Because, you know, they don't say God doesn't exist, but they say you cannot prove it by your reason. So if you believe in God, God exists for you, it's not through your reason, it's only through your emotion, your feeling, your subjectivity. Therefore, it is irrational. That is a problem. Saying that faith is irrational, you destroy faith. Because faith is based on reason. It's an act of the will. To be an act of the will, your reason must have some reason to believe in God. Okay. So, next paragraph. Presentation of the world without God. So they formulate a philosophy with the exclusion of God as a necessary being and last end of all things. If God exists, it is only in the mind of man. It is an invention of man. It is a projection of man. And you remember the three philosophers of the death of God, Nietzsche, Freud, and Marx. Nietzsche, Freud, and Marx. And the three. And what is the common theory they have? In fact, man projects himself in the idea of God, and he finds in the idea of God some causation. So he endures injustice, because he created God. You know, God is the fruit of man. And that is very serious, because if God is an invention of man, God does not exist only in my mind. Huh? Like Santa Claus. Santa Claus. Does Santa Claus exist?
In Canada.
Oh, well, in Canada. Yes, it's post office. H-O. But in fact, he exists only in the mind. He's a being of reason. So God and Santa Claus are on the same level. In fact, God is a kind of Santa Claus. For them, not for us, of course. Okay. So, kind of atheism. Positivist and positive dogmatic atheism. They affirm systematically the non-existence of God. Freud, Nietzsche, and Marx. Huh? But you have other also negative. I mean, in its attempt to explain the reality, in the materialistic view, materialistic bulb. You remember the materialists, they close themselves in a bulb, in a sphere, they don't want to go outside. So as to make the claim of the existence of God unnecessary. So for a materialist, for a Marxist, for example, everything must be explained from matter. Not from outside, from within the universe. Okay? Now we have, you know, the atheism is not existed even with the ancient Greek. Remember the Epicurean? They were practically atheism. They say, oh yes, the God exists, but they are only like air, you know, like air. They are very subtle. Atomists said the same. In fact, it happened in the past that some people affirmed the non-existence of God as a human, as a person. In France, you have the encyclopedia, we call the Enlightenment, le siècle des Lumières, word for word, the century of light, Enlightenment. And in fact, in that is, we saw that all the Freemasonry is there. So the French encyclopedists, Enlightenment, they deny the existence of God. And also some agnostic, so they deny our capacity to attain God. So we see that in the history. When you study with Father Canaan, he is no more teaching, they do to study, you see that some philosopher during, even in the Middle Age, someone were atheists. They were not numerous because they were danger for them to be cooked, to be burned. But someone existed. Okay? So those people have a theoretical reason for that. But many people, they don't believe in God for practical reason. You know, to believe in God is very bothering. I cannot be drunken, I cannot be to other women than my wife, I cannot steal, I cannot kill. It's very bothering, that guy. So it's better to ignore him, to say no. So the less you will think about him, the happier you will be. Think about the Epicurean. Epicurean, they said, don't pray to the God. If you pray to the God, you will awaken them in their nap, and they will be furious, and they will chastise you. So don't pray. You know, that is the position in the time of the Greek. Practical atheism. A practical atheism. Because I cannot fit my life with the law of God, with the natural law, I deny the author of the natural law. And it is a part of our situation in the Western world. Because God impedes us to have fun. We have to be Him. So because of that, we say, He's not there. We want to ignore His presence. Okay? A remark. Such atheism is easily possible and is common enough, but, of course, is not a system of thought and merit no attention for a philosopher. It is only a personal, subjective position in front of God. In such a way, I get rid of God, now I am free. Think about Jean-Paul Sartre. Remember Jean-Paul Sartre in France? after the war, up to 1960, 67. If God exists, man is not free. Is man free? God does not exist. I am free, therefore God does not exist. That is his reasoning. You know? It is either me or he. And I experiment my freedom. Therefore, God is not there. If I kill, he is not taking my hand, no. So God is not there. Okay? Let us have fun. Huh? We say in French, quand le chat n'est pas là, les souris dansent. When the cat is not here, mice dance. That means when the cat is not there to watch the mice have fun. You know? When God, by analogy, of course, there's a proverb. Huh? That means for many, God is, they deny God not because of theory, philosophical theory, because of practical reason. Like many Catholics abandon the church because they cannot conform their sexual life to the law of ethics proposed by the church. You know? So they say, okay, the church does not exist, no more for us. And we are not independent and we can do what we want. Okay? I continue. It may be adopted as a mode of life by theoretical atheists and also by all those who want to be free. Be free. That is the meaning of freedom. For someone, what is freedom? It is to be free from any constraint, any authority. And if you have the concept of freedom, absolute freedom, without anybody above you, of course you are obliged, using your reason to deny the existence of God. Okay, at the bottom of page 2, a criticism of that. The fact that belief in God has always been common and unbelief exceptional must incline us to think probably God exists. And that is the proof used by St. Thomas. We call the universal belief, the universal belief of the existence of God. It is a constant in the history of man that even the caveman has an idea of immortality. And they put food, they put many things in the tomb because they believe that there was something after. Okay? So the immortality and the idea of God, they go together. And that entire ignorance on the subject is not possible for one who uses his reason at all. Everybody can ask metaphysical questions. Everybody can ask where are they coming from, where the first man is coming from, where the first being is coming from, and where we are going to. And when you pass in front of a cemetery, you cannot escape the question, no? You cannot escape the question, what is after? No? So it is a universal, recognized fact. So atheist, in fact, is attached to some ideology. For example, Marx must deny God because his postulate is there is only matter. So Marx is logical with himself, and Freud is logical with himself, and Nietzsche is logical with himself. You know? Okay. So, and you know, if you look at the history, the influence of Nietzsche. In fact, the Nazi party, it was influenced by Nietzsche, the Superman. They want to create a civilization for 1,000 years on the Superman, the pure race. And when you think about Lenin and Stalin, and what happened in Russia, 60 million people killed or sent to Gulag, you see that when we ignore God, there is some bad consequences. When we are the master, it is what we do now. Tomorrow we go to Washington. Why? Because man took the place of God. Man decided that abortion is good. In fact, we are not better than Hitler and Nietzsche and Stalin. We are more polite. We legalize what they did not legalize. We are okay. because Kant separated, and many philosophers, don't forget, separated the moral order from the legal order. We saw that in ethics. Okay, the negativities for moral reason. The difficulty of not accepting God is not mainly intellectual, is moral, rather moral. I explained that to you just before. Okay? Because if you believe in God, you cannot continue to live as an animal. If I am immortal, I cannot live like an animal. If I do good, if I do evil, I have to pay for that. You know? That is the theory of Kant. Kant. Well, I have to prove the existence of God from ethics, from duty. So the denial in fact, look, what is the problem with Kant? Kant did not deny God. Kant does not deny, on the contrary, he arrives to the existence of God. But he denied metaphysics. He denied the capacity of pure reason to arrive to the existence of God. So no more pure reason, no more metaphysics. In fact, he was in the line of Hume, and he opposed Descartes. Descartes was a metaphysician. So he wanted to keep the rationality of Descartes, but also the empiricism of Hume. So he said we can know only the phenomenon, phenomenology. We cannot know the noumen, the substance of things, what is behind, metaphysics. We cannot know that. He did not deny. He said we cannot use our pure reason, but we can use our practical reason. So in fact, a distinction between pure reason and practical reason. Practical, that means a reason starting from your praxis. What is the praxis of man? It is ethics, morality of my action. So it starts from the duty, the problem, because he was a Lutheran. As a Lutheran, he was educated by a mother, very strict. So you have to obey, because you have to obey. It was applied by the Nazis during the war. They make soldiers real robots. Real robots. They impede them from thinking. I'm sure it's the same what happened to children who went in the market, 2 girls, 10 years old, with bombs, and they exploded. They indoctrinate them in such a way that they cannot think by themselves. Like this. Okay? It is very dangerous. Indoctrination, even in the Catholic Church, is very dangerous. Because indoctrination does not refer most of the time to reason, refer to emotion. So we speak to the heart, we create love or we create hate, and after that the consequence is killing people or loving people, you don't know. So Kant, we must be very clear, Kant does not deny the existence of God. He denies only the capacity of reason to know God using the principle of metaphysics. But he recognizes the capacity of man to go to God through, starting from his moral conduct, from his conscience, from his obligation, from his duty. Okay? So, in fact, it is a practical acceptance of God. For Kant, Kant accepts God not for a theoretical proof, but for a practical reason, practical motivation reason. So I continue just under the rectangle. It is a consequence of the negation of the possibility to know the thing in itself, to know noumen, the substance. For example, the substance, the essence, all those are things in themselves. They are noumen. And nobody can, when you look at yourself in the mirror, do you see your substance? You see only the accident, the phenomenon. Oh, I have beautiful hair. Oh, I have beautiful hair. Okay. So, at 1.3.4, Kant rejects the ontological, cosmological, theory. In fact, he rejects all the metaphysical proof. He keeps only the moral truth. And St. Thomas uses also that moral proof. But St. Thomas uses also the reason, metaphysics. You know? In fact, there are, it's interesting, there are many ways, many rooms in my father's house. And Kant has a great influence in their thinking. Next page. We have the position also of those who say, we remember the difference between the theist and the deist. You remember that? The theist and the deist. The theists arrive to prove the existence of God. And after, when he approves the existence of God, he says, you know, God is the creator, is the one also who continues to take care of his creation. So there may be possibility of relation with God. But the deists, they said God is an architect, God is a clockmaker, God is an engineer, and he does something after that, he comes back home and he takes a rest. And they say, you know, it is in the Bible, no? The seventh day, God took a nap. Of course, there is other passage where we see God is helping the Jew in the sea, putting the water into column. Huh? But it's just interesting to see. They can find even a biblical foundation for that. You know, you are a Christian, look at Genesis. During 6 days, God worked, and the 7th day, he went to his own, and don't bother him because he sleeps very well. And now it is our business to take care of the world. It is our business to decide what is good or bad. We are the unique responsible. So we recognize that God was at the beginning, but now God is no more here, because that day, days. And you remember, I told you, all except one, the founder of your country, were Illuminati. They were theists. So be careful of that. And when they speak about God, what God? Is the God of the theist that can intervene and say abortion is not good? Or is the God of the theist? He created babies, and after that he created an embryo. After that he said, don't bother with that. It's up to you to decide what is good, what is wrong. You understand now? We cannot only fight material relativism directly. We have to go to the root. And to the root, a part of the root is in the conception of God. If I am a deist, I don't bother with God. I will say politics, economy, everything must be totally separated from faith. And they are logical. Because God created the world, after that, he slept. He contemplated himself as separated. He was the thought, thinking the thought. He has no time to bother with a little earthquake. No, that is not the problem. God is a pure God. He will not make his hand dirty taking care of our little business. Now, next, page 4, paragraph 1-4. That attitude is we call an anti-intellectualist attitude. Why? Because we don't want to use the reason to prove God. So we prove God only through feeling, through emotion, through sentiment, through the will. So faith is a pure act of will. And I said that last class, fideism. The less I understand, the better is my faith. Sometimes they accuse the Jesuits to preach obedience, sécoute un cadavre. Obedience, sécoute un cadavre. What is a cadavre? A corpse, a dead person. So the ideal is to obey without reasoning, without thinking, like a robot. That is exactly what Hitler asked from his soldiers. And what is interesting, at the trial of Nuremberg, you remember? Nuremberg, where they charged the criminal of war. The criminal of war, what was their defense? They said, we obey. And what the answer? Man must obey, but always using his reason, his conscience. So if you work against your reason, against your conscience, but you are wrong, and they executed many of them. No, only a few ones, because there were many. You have they do not want to accept a reason proof. Don't forget, some people in every religion, I think about Catholic and Protestant, they take a refuge only in prayer. They don't want to be mixed with the social reality, with the political reality, with the economic reality. They don't want to have dirty hands. That is fideism. No? We have to use our reason. We have to do something. There are many passages in the Bible. See, it's not enough to say, Lord, Lord, Lord. You have to do something. Saint James, who is not loved by the Protestant, he says, show me your faith, I will show you my action, my charity, my action, my action. Okay? You have an example among the American philosopher, William James. In fact, William James, if you read the quotation, in fact, you see the conclusion, the last, these faith tendencies are in him but the expression of our goodwill. In fact, there is a slope of goodwill, and our faith is based not on reasoning, on solid reason, but on confidence. You know, I trust you, I trust you, I trust you, I believe you. I don't want to verify, but I believe you. No? That is the attitude of many people. No? And that is some philosopher like William James. They say, you know, believers, they are there. Those who believe, they don't use their reason. When they believe God one and triune, they are stupid. Because one is not. So they don't use their reason. They use only their emotion. They will to believe. They will to believe. We say, there is an horse here. You know, there is a horse. Yes, we believe there is a horse. That is how William James and many philosophers consider those who have faith. For them, faith is reduced to feeling, emotion. Scottish, remember the Scottish school of jurisprudence. The Scottish school of jurisprudence, the foundation of ethics for them is emotion, sentiment. You know Curidas? Curidas, Saint John Marie Vianney, the patron of priests. Okay, he was in Italy. I was there a few times. I said to Mass 5 times with his child. But I'm not the saint for that. So the church is here. There is a square. Here there is a bar, a tavern, a bistro, we say in French. A bistro. During the Mass, who is in the church? Who are in the church? Women. Women. Who are at the bar?
The men.
Men. Because men, they are not influenced by feeling. Men, they are macho. Men, they lose their reason. Because I lose my reason, I cannot go with my wife in the church. They will laugh at me, They will laugh at me. Yes, it's true. I went in Rome many times, and what I discovered on Sunday morning in many churches, in the churches where I was, we had 18 women for 2 men. Who saved the church in Italy? Women. A few priests. That is a fact. I remember I saw a movie 45 years ago. It was exactly that. It was the first communion. And the family in Italy, a first communion is a great event. So they prepared that. But the mother went to the church with the boy and the girl for first communion. But the father did not go. He prepared the banquet. The way to. No, I don't want to universalize. I don't want to exaggerate. But I remember I was in France. I went to. I have a friend. He lives not far from Nancy, in the east of France, and he invited me to go to his village on Sunday morning. So I went to the village, and in that Lorraine, they continue to have the practice of to put men on one side and women on the other side. So what do you think? Women are packed and men they are scattered. Okay, but that corresponds to that conception that faith is for women and kids. That means it's for emotion and there is no reason. And if you study science, physics, biology, you cannot believe in God. If you believe in God, it is because you are a believer. On Sunday, you go to church, you say, God, I believe you are the creator. But during the week, you cannot say God is the creator. Matter is the creator of people. No? In fact, we become schizophrenic. Schizophrenic. We have a way of thinking on Sunday, faith, oh, Jesus, I love you. And during the week, we say, God has nothing to do with business, with economy, with politics. It is exactly, we are not allowed to say the prayer on the football ground. No? It's not intentional. Okay, so you can read that by yourself. Huh? He called that the slope of goodwill. Huh? You have many reasons. Finally, at the end, oh, you say, yes, I believe. I have no proof. I have no conviction. But I believe. Yeah. It's better to believe than not to believe. And that is the bit of Pascal. You remember Pascal, the French philosopher? Huh? We see that in the few. And he said, it is better to believe in God than not to believe in God. Because if I believe in God, God exists, I win everything. If I believe in God, God doesn't exist, I lose nothing. Good, no? But it's not a sufficient reason. Okay, page 5. In fact, here we have the substitution of the will for reason. My will takes the place of my reason. And the consequence of that in many religions is fanatism. Fanatism. You must not understand, you have to act without understanding. That is holiness. Now, consider, it is a fact that some men do live such slope of goodwill. That is a fact. That men, some women, they believe because of feeling. Huh? Okay? It is true also that men give mental agent to proposition for motive that are not rational. Sometimes we accept something which is not rational, but we believe without understanding. So what is worse? We believe in things that is contrary to our reason. I don't remember where it is written in St. Thomas, but I was told that many, many times in my studies that St. Thomas will have said, I say will have said, because we put many, many things in the mouth of St. Thomas, that if somebody is convinced that Jesus Christ is not God, he must not believe in Jesus Christ. Because if he believes in Jesus Christ, he acts against his conscience, against his reason. God made us at his image, intellect. We have always to use our intellect. And when we apply our intellect in ethics, we call that conscience. Okay? So, well, that position, of course, is not a philosophical position. Huh? It is a sentimental position. Huh? It's based only on emotion. But here, you touch what I told you many times, democracy. Is democracy based only on reason? Democracy, many times, is based on emotion. You know, those who analyze why Kerry was not chosen to be president, because he was not a handsome man. You know, he has many bones. You know. So, no, he cannot be. To be a president, you must be a handsome man. You know. And before, when they go to television, they prepare them, because they must have the best look to affect not the reason, to affect the feeling, the heart. I come back to Aristotle, Plato. Plato compared the society to the human body. Okay? Here, head. Here, and here.
Kidneys.
Kids.
So Aristotle divides, no, excuse me, Plato divides the society in three parts. Those who think, those who have courage, and those who have only emotion. Who are those who have knowledge?
Philosophers.
Of course, the philosopher. Who are the heart of a society?
Philosophers.
Military. The military. Because they defend the society, they give their life and they fight. And all the rest, kidneys.
Oh gosh.
Emotion. Now that is if you read that one, c'est the Republic number, chapter 5, book 5, you will have that. Because kidney is emotion, you know. I don't want to make experiments. You understand? Okay. Now I go to next paragraph. The need of demonstration of the existence of God and the kind of demonstration possible. First, the need. But we saw those who oppose to demonstration. Now, if we want to prove demonstration, we must prove that it is necessary to arrive to know the existence of God. The question is, does the existence of God stand in need of proof? Or is not the proposition God exists an analytical proposition immediately evident to us? Here we come back to what we studied in logic, the last class. When we study induction, deduction, a priori, a posteriori. Remember that? I told you that is very, very important in philosophy. Very important. So when we can say, can I say that God exists? Because I can say. It's not enough to say that God exists. It's not necessary to prove that, because if I analyze the idea of God as the first being, and there is nobody above him, I must say God exists. So in fact, we start from our concept of God to prove his existence. You remember last class we speak about Father Gioberti, Torino. He said there is a confusion, the first confusion, the identity between the logical level and the ontological level. That means, if I know who is God, automatically I must affirm his existence. And that it is the essential of what we call ontologism, the ontological proof of ontologism. So we have to speak about that, because one doctor of the church is there, Saint Anselm, Saint Augustine also, and Descartes. So, the answer, the proposition God exists, if we consider it merely in itself, apart the reality, of course, we are obliged to say that God exists. Because the concept of God implies necessarily his existence. You understand that? And the fact I know who is God, logically, that concept in my mind implies necessarily his existence.
But that's not in reality, right?
No, exactly.
No.
Yeah.
It's the same, for example, you can know perfectly what is a leprechaun, a cyclops, a unicorn, etc. You know it clearly, but does it exist? No. But for someone, the level of logic and the level of ontology are the same. It was the case of, remember, Father Gioberti. There was confusion between the two levels. Yes, brother?
So you say only when viewed as not in reality, what would you call that? Mental or?
Mental, of reason, reason.
Okay.
Okay? Okay, so, you know, the concept God exists, if I analyze that existence, and God is God, he must exist. He has no choice. So what happened? Some philosophers, they say, that idea of God is in my mind at my birth. When I was born, I have innate idea of God. And who put that idea of God? It is God himself. So that means here we are in idealism. Idealism is exactly here. I have the idea of a thing, therefore the thing exists. It's not true. You can think about a beautiful, suppose you are the purser of your congregation. You think about a beautiful box filled, after the collection, filled with $20 bills. And when you arrive to the sacristy after the Mass, and someone, they open there is the box filled with $20 bill. No, it can be, it cannot be. It's not because I think about that the thing exists, okay? Okay, the answer now, the answer to the objection. The answer to ontologism, to that here. So the proposition God exists is an analytical proposition. Analytical. We analyze the idea of God. And when we analyze the idea of God, we discover that there must be existence in the idea of God. If we think about God and God does not exist, is not God. Okay? So let us go to the criticism of that. We analyze only the subject. If I say, for example, John is a Catholic, when I see John, can I say he is a Catholic?
No.
No.
I add to John something that is not in John. And we call that synthetical. And judgment. We put in John, American, good golfer. And we can know that only a posteriori, after experience. But we can know, for example, when we study God is merciful. No, we can say merciful adds nothing to God. That is an analytical judgment. But when you say God exists, can you say it is an analytical judgment? No. Because how we can know that? Do you have an experience, direct experience of the existence of God? No. You have no intuition of the existence of God. If I say, for example, John is Catholic, John is a good golfer, I know that from experience. But in the case, here I cannot say that. So analyzing what is God, ontological philosopher like Saint Anselm discover that God exists. So next page, what is the criticism we can have for that? So we can say, I will sit down because I feel I am tired a little bit. Not because I'm tired of you. But I sit otherwise I will not be able to continue. Okay, can I just? I am inferior to you. I should be on a podium, no? But you can decide by your mind to put me high. Okay, so nego, we have no right to affirm that God exists. The unique way to affirm that God exists is from his effects. How we can say that a farmer put seed in the field? How can you say that? When you see the crop growing, no? You see the corn growing, you see the rice growing, so you see, because of Q, there was a P. Can you say that this man, this farmer did that? No. So you can say there is a cause, but you don't know exactly who is that cause. So you have to search, you have to reason, and how can you arrive that? Only through experience, sense experience, okay? Or many ways of experience or witnesses, etc. Okay. So we have two kinds of self-evidence. But here you have two terms to know. First, evidence in itself, self-evidence in itself, and to us, self-evident in itself and to us. But for example, you study mathematics. 5 plus 3 equals 8. That is self-evident to you, is self-evident in itself. Okay? But you study mathematics at the level of geometry or trigonometry, and for the teacher it is clear, it is self-evident. Is it self-evident for you? No. So a thing can be self-evident in itself and self-evident for us, and a thing can be self-evident in itself and not for us. And when you are a teacher, you know that. No? Many things, they are clear for you, evident for you. And you look at your student, you have the impression you are in the ocean, no? With many fish around you. It's not the case here. Huh? And, there is no fish in my class. Huh? Because everyone is bright. Huh? Understand? Okay. So I go to the rectangle. There are two kinds of evidence. Huh? First, evidence in itself, but not to us. Evidence in itself and for us. For example, the first principle of causality, principle of identity. All the principles we saw last class, huh? All those principles are evident in themselves and they are evident for us. When I say there is no effect without a cause, it is evident in itself, it is evident for me. Okay? But when I say to my student, a rectangle is made with 180 degrees, is it evident for the student?
No.
No. So we have to prove that. It's a theorem of geometry. Huh? So many things are evident in themselves and many things escape our knowledge. Many things we know in nature are evident. Electricity is evident, but can everybody explain the phenomenon of electricity? Everybody knows that to have electricity, we have to put on the switch. Huh? But not everybody can explain how it's possible that here in Connecticut, in Cromwell, we have electricity. That is science. And that science, it becomes evident for the teacher and for the student who understand, but for the majority of people, it is not evident. Not evident. So what they do, either they believe without understanding, or they try to understand. Because there is two possibilities. In front of every idea which is not evident, we can say, I cannot know that, or I can try to know that. I can try. So the first is agnosticism. I cannot. But we can say, I want. If you study theology for 4 years, 3 years, if you study, because it is you want to know. Everything you will study that is not self-evident. When you will study the treaty in theology, the God one and triune, the treaty on freedom and grace, is not evident at all. It was not evident even for St. Augustine. You remember St. Augustine when he was searching to know what is the Holy Trinity. Huh? He was walking on the shore of the Mediterranean, and suddenly he see a little boy digging a hole and putting the water of the ocean into the hole. He said, my little boy, what do you do? What are you doing? Oh, you know, I am trying to put all the water of the Mediterranean Sea into this hole. Hey, it's not reasonable. You cannot. It is not reasonable to try to understand the Holy Trinity. Because only God can understand himself. Huh? But it's not a reason to stop it, to say, I do nothing to understand. So theology and philosophy are an effort to understand what is not self-evident. And to understand that, then we need experience, we need the witness of God, etc. Many ways. So I go to next page, page 7. Well, I already spoke about that. I go to the last sentence of the quotation of St. Thomas. For as much as we do not know the essence of God, the proposition is not self-evident to us. So God exists is not evident to us, but needs to be proved by such things that are more evident to us. What are those such things that are more evident to us to know God? The universe. The universe, the trees, the plant, and the canticle we said this morning for the feast of St. Agnes. Canticle. Eyes of Lord, bless the Lord. Snow of the Lord, bless the Lord. I don't think many are inclined to say that to the Lord. But in fact, everything is made by the Lord. Okay. So I go to the demonstration. The demonstration, here it's only a repetition of what we study in logic. Some demonstrations are a priori, and some demonstrations are a posteriori. No. A priori, that means before any experience. Before any experience. For example, in mathematics, we can calculate, or in physics, we can calculate how much ton of cement we need to build that house, for example. We can calculate that, before experience, because we know the theory. So, that is a priori. In fact, we use the a priori knowledge or method of knowing for the attributes of God, and also for his existence from his effect. No, excuse me, that is a posteriori. For example, when we study in 4 weeks, probably 5 weeks, God is merciful, God is omnipotent. We know that a priori. We say God exists, is pure act, is pure perfection, and those perfections are in the thing, therefore, God must have those perfections as the source of perfection. That is a priori. We reason only from the concept of the subject. We start from the subject. God is existing. God. And we analyze God, and we arrive to the mercy of God, the power of God, etc. The other way, it is the way of experience, sense knowledge. And we saw that in philosophy of man. You remember, everything we know passes through our senses, even the idea of the existence of God. Because we have no intuition, no direct knowledge of God. I don't speak about eternity here. I speak about on earth. On earth. Okay? So you can see that in the three column. Prior to nature, in nature. In fact, here, and we can see from P to Q. I start from P and conclude that Q exists. If I affirm P, I affirm Q. Remember that? Paul works, therefore he. If Paul works, he exists. Remember? If P, then Q. Paul works, P. Therefore, I can affirm Q. Okay? But the other position, if I say, I see the order in the world, I see the beauty, the organization, the unity of the human body. I have a lot of harmony, beauty, contingency, etc. Okay? I start from those facts. They are facts. And from those facts, known through my senses, don't forget, I try to use some universal principle. Remember, major, minor, conclusion. Major are the universal principle. Minor is the fact. Well, the fact, for example, there is motion in the world. Motion. Okay? Now, the principle, there is no effect without a cause. There is no motion without a matter, without a cause. Therefore, there must be a first matter. Well, that is the essential of reasoning. But we reason from experience. It is a posteriori, from experience. And that conclusion of that judgment is scientific. the conclusion of the a priori judgment is analytical. Well, I apologize if I repeat for those who were with me in philosophy of man and logic, because that is fundamental. Try to understand that. Huh? Not to pass the examination, but you need that many times in theology, in metaphysics, in philosophy, etc. Okay? I go to page 8. The application now of the existence of God. In fact, if we reason about God, the idea is the idea of God under another idea.
No.
The idea of God is the reason why we saw that being is only analogical. Being is not above God. Being is not the genus. Being is everywhere. Huh? Okay, so we cannot find, okay, God, nothing exists before God. So that is very important, because the idea of God in itself requires that there is nothing before Him. If there is something before Him, God is no more God, and the something before Him is God. And we cannot go to the infinite like that. Huh? Okay? So, next paragraph. Possibility of a posteriori proof of existence of God. We can prove that. But there are things posterior to God in their nature and prior to God in our knowledge. Here we are on two levels. On the level of nature, there must be something prior, before the thing exists. Okay? But I can say if the thing exists, the thing should be known before, should be taught before, no? So the thought of God and the knowledge of God is prior to the existence of things. You know? But I know the existence of thing, of God, through the existence of things. But we are on two different levels. We are on the level of knowledge, logical level, and we are on the level of reality, ontological, ontological level and logical level, the two levels. You remember Father Gioborti, he confounds both. But it is not because I know the theory that the practice is necessary there, no? Every semester, Father Mosey prepared the list of rooms. Never that list corresponds to the reality when the student arrives. Never. A good proof. That logical order, it is very logical. Father Mosey prepared that, very logical, you know. But the 3rd of September, or the 25th of August, or the 12th of January, is beautiful planning is to be done again, you know, to be changed. Okay? That means there is a gap, a gap for us between the theory and the practice. A gap between them. Okay? That means it is not because I know Q that automatically I know P. You remember that, huh? If Paul works, he exists. Q. Paul exists. Can I conclude that Paul works? No. He can. How I can know that Paul works? How I can know that? Only through experience. I will go at his home. I will see if he is working in the garden or he is sleeping in his bed. You know? I can know, we know that without experience. It's the same for the knowledge of God. And it is the reason why we must be merciful for those who don't arrive to the perfect and correct knowledge of God. For example, those who believe in many gods, etc. Okay? Polytheism. So I go now to page 9. We can only obtain only an imperfect knowledge of the nature of God. Why? Suppose a man, a philosopher, or a theologian say, I attain the absolute, complete knowledge of God. Come to me, I will teach everything about God. Is it possible? No. Only God knows himself perfectly. Why it is not possible? Because every creature is made with potency and act. That means we are not totally, in one instant, what we are going to be. For example, you are preparing to become a priest or to become the superior of a congregation or to become a nurse, I don't know. Huh? Because here we have many superior general in front of me. For bishop, I don't dare to say that. Huh? When I taught my students in Africa, I never thought that among my students I will have 6 bishops.
Wow.
Yeah, 6. But I'm not a saint because I am bishop. Maybe they will help me to pass the custom. Saint Peter, the officer, the custom officer, I say, you know, Saint Peter, I am not like the rest of priests. Huh? You know, a total humility, you know, I have 6 bishops. So don't forget that. Huh? You will say, oh, my little Father Legault, I think you need a long time in purgatory. Okay, so we know that is, so it is obvious, but someone did not accept. You see, we can know God without experience. Why? Because God put its idea in our mind. Okay, I come back to the teaching of St. Thomas. So we can obtain only an imperfect knowledge from effects not proportionate to the cause. No perfect knowledge of the cause can be obtained. It is not because I know Q that immediately I know perfectly P. Even if you know the cause of the effect, you know the cause only as a cause, not as a being. I give an example. You go to the dentist. The dentist takes care of your teeth. You know? So you know the dentist only through his capacity, his ability to take care of your teeth. Do you know all his life? You can say, oh, your dentist a day. You were in the bar and that woman was not your wife. Huh? No, we know only through the effects. And we are limited to the effects. So how? That's the problem. How we can start from particular effects and go to God? Through analogy. How we can say God is my Father? Of course, you will say Jesus told that, yes. But Jesus told us because he knew that we understand what is a Father. You know? We know God is a Father if we have in our life a Father. Imagine the student, the children educated with lesbian, only in Lesbos, women. They don't know what is a father. They don't know what is a mother because they have too many mothers. What is folly? It is exactly the idea of Plato. You know, we have to read Plato. And we find in Plato, the book of Republic, book 5, you will find all the pure communism is there. He said, you know, to have a good fighter, the heart, you remember that, the heart? We must recompense only the good warriors. So the good warriors will be allowed to have a wife. In such a way, the children who were born by it will be warriors, you know. We don't give a wife to a marshmallow. Somebody who has no bone. That was in fact, it was a pure race. So the idea of Plato was to make all the women together and the children together in such a way that the children, when they will see all the women, they will never know who is their mother. In such a way, they will respect all the women. And the boy will be the same. They will not be able to know who is their father, so they can respect every soldier, every warrior. You know, that is the theory of you know, it's important to know those things. You know, I don't think we are ready to canonize Saint Aristotle. Sometimes, of course, I have a great admiration for Aristotle. For me, the best philosopher is Aristotle and Plato. But I cannot accept everything. to go closer to us, St. Thomas opposed Don Scott about the Immaculate Conception. St. Thomas said the Blessed Virgin Mary had the original sin. She was a sinner. And the Blessed Don Scott, they say no. And the Franciscans, they say no, they oppose the Dominican. And St. Thomas is a doctor of the church. St. Bonaventure is a doctor of the church. And Don Scott is a doctor of the church. Interesting, no? We cannot take the old teaching of anyone, even my teaching. We have to make a discernment. Not everything maybe is true, or not everything is, use your judgment. Or not everything is to be published. It's dangerous. The CIA will come. Okay. So I continue. Yet, for every effect, Q, the existence of a cause can be demonstrated. So we can demonstrate the existence of God from his effect, a posteriori. C, though from the effect we cannot perfectly know God, as we cannot know perfectly what is P, because we know what is Q. I insist on that. You remember that, very, very important. If P, then Q. If I affirm Q, the effect, I cannot affirm exactly the cause. I have to demonstrate which one is the efficient cause of Q. Though from the effect we cannot perfectly know God. Okay. And if we know God, it is only by analogy. Therefore, we are condemned to have an imperfect, limited idea of God. Because if ever we arrive to a perfect idea of God, I will adore you. You will be God. Only God knows perfectly himself. So we are condemned, I will say, to never stop to know who is God. To discover always who is God, the whole eternity, and we never finish. I told my student yesterday night in Philosophy of Compendium, when St. John Bosco received the visit of his friend who was a seminarian who died before him, and they have an agreement. The first who died, he will say to the other, what happened on the other side? And he said, totalitaire, alitaire. Totally different. Totalitaire, alitaire.
What do you say?
Totalitaire. Totally, adverb. Alitaire, different. Alien, alien. Totally different. That means take all the treaty of St. Thomas, St. Bonaventure, all the teaching of the Catholic Catechism, all that is totally, cannot describe what is on the other side. It's not a reason to stop. We have to search. But we must accept our limits. And that is important for you as an apologist or as a teacher. You cannot convince perfectly someone of the existence of God. You cannot. Why? Because to accept the existence of God, the person must will. Why? Because the knowledge we give, the proof we give to that person are not totally obvious. There is a part of mystery. So when even in philosophy, when we teach the proof of the existence of God, in fact the proof of St. Thomas are very limited. I say sometimes to my students, never the proof of St. Thomas convert to a person. Never. They cannot. Because they are on the domain of reason, and faith is the domain of grace. But they are useful to prepare the person to receive. You remember, everything is received according to the disposition of the receiver. So next class, we will study the ontological argument and we introduce to the many, the structure of all the argument of St. Thomas. And you have many documents. So you can take them with you when you go to Washington, and you can read that in the bus. If you don't have time to read everyone, you can read at least someone. But that, they are very, very good for you as a future teacher. Very useful. Okay. Have a safe trip.